There was no doubt what the central theme of Trump's election campaign was going to be.
Sadly, the American dream is dead. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before, and we will make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jesse Ventura on Sean Hannity's program. Oh, this ought to be good. And they start with a question of, did Bush keep us safe? And is torture, et cetera, the right way to go? And what are the methods that we need to do to keep us safe? I have funny comments on Hannity as he struggles to appear as credible as Ventura. But let's watch the first clip first.
Look, we can go down the old road of our battle. You do not like the Bush administration.
No.
All right, you don't like Dick Cheney. I got that. I understand that. But I want to ask you some new questions.
All right.
All right, if you're game.
Sure.
All right? Because what is it, what do you think of Barack Obama?
I think he's exceptionally intelligent from, when you hear him speak and
He
through...
reads a teleprompter. Oh, come on.
Well, at least we got a president now who can read one.
Listen,
we didn't have that.
That's not a sign of intelligence, but
Yes, it is.
No,
if
it's
you're
not.
not capable of reading a teleprompter.
No, it's not.
No, I'll say this. I think he's very intelligent. I think it's far too early to be judgmental because, let's face it, he inherited a mess. Wait, he inherited 2 wars. He inherited economy in the tank. Economy in the tank, 2 wars. I wouldn't have wished that on my worst enemy.
Well, George Bush inherited a recession. George Bush inherited the negative.
No, he did not.
Yes, he did. Oh, yes, he did.
Wait a minute.
Oh, yes, he
If
did.
we sat
And the
here-
negative impact of 9/11.
All right.
All right.
You're telling me that the United States was better off after George Bush or before him?
After.
Oh, my God. How can you make that statement?
You just did. And I'll tell you why.
Well, I don't even need to talk to you about it.
Listen,
then,
it's not
because
about Republicans.
It's ridiculous. This country was far better off before George Bush than it is after George Bush.
Want me to quote you the 9/11 Commission report? For an entire decade... I'm glad I can make you laugh. For an entire
when you
decade...
bring up the 9/11 Commission, that makes me laugh.
For an entire...
Because they didn't investigate nothing.
Well, I agree. And to one extent, you're partially right, but they did get one thing right, that there were a group of radicals that were at war with the United States, and we weren't at war with them. We saw the first Trade Center bombing, the embassy bombings, the USS Cole, and we have radicals that think God is going to reward them in heaven with virgins, Jesse. How do you stop them? What do you do? Tell me what you do.
You pay attention to memos on August 6th that tell you exactly what bin Laden's going to do. Instead, we hear Condoleezza Rice going, I didn't know what they were going to do. And the memo says bin Laden set to hijack planes and ram them into buildings.
I have a better idea.
And your buddy, George Bush, he was on vacation in Crawford at the time. Did you know he took over 900 days of vacation?
No, president's never off. Do you know that? Let me give you an example.
This one was. He wasn't on his watch. The biggest attack in history happened on his watch.
See, but that's why I love Jesse, because he points out things that are so damn obvious that everybody else, for some reason, is afraid to point out, which is, what are you talking about? 9/11 happened on his watch. Are you aware that we're still not at September 11th of 2009, meaning getting to the same point in the Obama's administration that we were under Bush's administration when we were attacked? And if an attack happened now, what do you think? Conservatives would just say, oh, no, it wasn't Obama's fault. We're nowhere near September 11th, right? So Bush went all the way to September 11th of his first term, got a memo, as Ventura points out, saying they're going to attack you. And here's how they're going to attack you, in which cities. And what Ventura didn't even point out there was Bush literally, while at Crawford, told the guy at the CIA who gave him the briefing, okay, you covered your ass, now go back home. He did not keep us safe, and it is an absolute joke to pretend that he did. So now Ventura's going to keep it going. They're going to argue over deficits here, and I'm going to tell you in a little bit why I think Ventura has so much credibility on both of these fronts. It's clip number 5.
Do you know who first brought up the deficit?
Yeah.
Ross Perot.
It's true.
That's right.
That's true.
And so don't come at me that all the Republicans do, they spend like Democrats, only they charge it. At least the Democrats go cash and carry. The Republicans do the same thing and charge it.
Though, but in 1 year to quadruple the deficit, to have the CBO tell us that in 10 years, let me finish. Well, our kids and grandkids, but in 10 years we're going to quadruple. And no, that's not true. No, this deficit is Obama's deficit. This is Obama's spending. Obama did it in 1 year.
To fix George Bush's mess.
You just...
But it's so true. You know, Obama, when the man just came into office, who created this mess that he's got to fix? Obviously, George Bush. Now, the reason Ventura has so much credibility is because he's a true independent. He couldn't give a rat's ass about the Democrats. He ran against the Democrats in Minnesota, and he has no interest in coddling them. And Hannity knows this, and that's why I look at Ventura and I think, you know, very similar to the way that I think, because I was a Republican all the way until 2003. I think, look, this isn't a matter of, I'm trying to be partisan on one side or another. Ventura's not trying to be partisan, and everybody knows that. It's just that when you look at it, you go, well, these guys clearly screwed it up. They screwed up national security. They screwed up America's image by torturing. They screwed up the deficits. They screwed up the economy. Now you want me to come out here and tell you it's 50-50. Well, I'm not going to do it. And neither is Jesse. He's more likely to body slam you. So now we go to the final clip. He's going to talk to Hannity about how Republicans are playing politics.
Jeez, you didn't even get to any good topics.
Because you insist on going over the old topic, and I knew you'd do this.
Because I need to pound it home to people to have them realize Barack Obama inherited this mess. Republicans had the Congress for 6 years, and they had the presidency.
Now it's Obama's mess, and Obama quadrupled the deficit in 1 year, and we'll see what happens to our kids and grandkids.
Okay, well, George Bush had a bailout too, didn't he? And you know what's interesting?
You're never going to run for office. I don't care what you say about
Republicans voted for it when it was George Bush's bailout, but they wouldn't vote for it when it was Obama's. That's politics at its worst. That's putting your party before the country.
I am a Reagan conservative. I'm
a Goldwater conservative.
Well, I'm a Reagan conservative. We just disagree on social issues on many things.
Yeah.
Reagan gave us the longest period of peacetime economic growth. He ended the Cold War, and he took on evil in his time, and I love him for it.
Okay.
And Bush kept us safe. Goodbye. Thank you.
Kept us safe. The biggest attack in history on his watch.
Yeah, okay.
Don't tell me he
Bill
kept
Clinton
us safe. No, I'll thank George Bush, who don't read memos and who goes on vacation and
You should have blamed
sleeps.
Clinton for not getting bin Laden when he was off.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I'd rather have 1,000 Monicas than all these 9/11s and the terrorists.
I don't know why I like you, but I do. All right,
I tell you the truth, that's why.
That's part of it. The other part of it is, oh, no, go from the top rope. The other reason is Hannity's like a little kid, and he knows that Ventura's a real man, right? He's a Navy SEAL, went through SEER training, et cetera, et cetera. It's obvious that he's speaking the truth. He doesn't have an agenda. He surfs in Mexico for 6 months out of the year. He doesn't give a damn. He's not playing politics. He's not trying to make a buck off of conservatives or liberals. And so when Hannity's in his presence, when Hannity's never served, never done anything, he's like, oh, okay, all right now, but remember how much I love Reagan. And Ventura looks at him like, what's wrong with you, man? Like, why do I care how much you love Reagan? God, what? And the reason he says that is because he's got nothing. He can't defend Bush, right? He can't defend the Republicans playing politics because Ventura is, again, impossible to argue with. He's right. They voted for the same exact bailout for Bush, and they didn't for Obama, the Republicans. Why? Because of dirty politics. So, and the other part that I love about Ventura is he doesn't mind coming off the top rope several times. He said, look, my job here is to pound it home. And he's right, because no one else is doing it. And then when he does it, even Hannity's like, okay, I don't know why I like you, but you're such a man. You remind me of the other man in my life, Reagan. God, you guys are so manly. And then, you know, so Hannity's got nothing. You know, Obama. Yeah, please, please, please.
Watch the live show 24/7 at theyoungturks.com.
To talk a little bit more about these redacted pages, along with the latest on the counterterrorism front. Earlier, I was joined by former Minnesota governor and host of Off the Grid, Jesse Ventura, and I first asked him what he thinks these redacted pages could reveal.
Well, why were they redacted in the first place? You know, that's the question I always ask, the same as the Warren Commission back in the Kennedy era. Why did things have to be locked up for 40 years? If the government story is true, then there should be nothing kept from the public. Now, these redacted pages, according to Congressman Jones, he's read them, and he said they have nothing to do with national security. They absolutely should be released so the public can read, and it's really up. He hinted it was a money trail, and the money trail led to a place where obviously certain people don't want the public to know that it led there. You know, you kind of chuckle. Well, you never chuckle, but when you look at these mysterious things, you go back to Watergate when the infamous Deep Throat and the bowels said, "Follow the money." Well, I've learned in my 63 years and all my involvement with government that following the money is usually a pretty good way to learn answers. And if that's what these 28 redacted pages deal with, we, the public, certainly have a right to know it. Why should anything be kept from us? And let's remember something that's inherently lost in America today. They work for us. We've forgotten that. We're the boss. They're the employees. So, you know, it's time for us to flex our muscle and say enough is enough.
All right, well, you've been criticized of your views of 9/11 since this happened some 13 years ago. Has your viewpoint changed on what happened that day at all?
Well, why are you criticized? That's the question that really should be asked. I mean, the government only gave a conspiracy theory. That's all they did. Here's the government's conspiracy theory that 19 Islamic radicals armed with box cutters defeated our multi-billion-dollar air defense system, all while conspiring with a bearded guy in a cave in Afghanistan. That's their conspiracy theory. Anything else, I mean, why is that for sure a fact? We don't know that. That's simply what the government offered us as what happened on 9/11. And today there's holes in a lot of that. Some of those 19 people are actually alive. They weren't on the planes. Well, why haven't their names been then redacted if they're indeed alive? And I know a lot about 9/11. Because not only did I go there shortly after it happened with Governor Pataki when I was governor of Minnesota, but I've also done 2 investigative TV shows on it where I've spoken to people that were there and they survived it. And many of them tell a far different story than what the government has told us. Now, whom should I believe? Should I believe what comes out of my government, who I might add lies to me all the time? They lied about weapons of mass destruction. They lied about ties to Al-Qaeda and the Iraq War. They lied about the murder or the rescue of Jessica Lynch. They lied about the murder of Pat Tillman. It goes on and on. Whom should I believe? People who lived through it or the bureaucrats in Washington? I ask you that.
Okay. We heard the president speak last night about his strategy to combat America's newest counterterrorism threat. Of course, that's ISIS. He said no boots on the ground, but certainly a renewed campaign of airstrikes along with a broad coalition that's been built. Did the president lay out a plan you think can defeat ISIS?
I think what needs to be asked is, where did ISIS come from? In my opinion, ISIS is a creation of our invasion of Iraq, a war that I have opposed from day one. We invaded Iraq, we overthrew Saddam Hussein, and lo and behold, now we have ISIS. I think I can say this quite confidently. If Saddam were still in charge over there wouldn't be ISIS. So ISIS has come to being because of policies of the United States in the war in Iraq, and now we have to deal with them. I don't think anything is going to work over there because, again, it's a civil war type thing. ISIS is made up of one religious sect. They're battling the other religious sect. Then you have the Kurds up north doing that. And so no matter who you align yourself with, the other religious sect is going to view you as the opponent. It's a war that'll go on forever. I've said this many times. The United States was, for Anglo-Saxon America, was discovered by Christopher Columbus, right? What what was he doing? He was trying to find a way not to go to the Middle East to get to India 600, 700 years ago. And he was willing to fall off the earth to do it. If that's the case, my position is let's get out of there, because there is no win situation over there, and there never has been.
And Governor, he did make one thing clear, that he won't hesitate to go into Syria. Let's take a quick listen to that.
I've made it clear that we will hunt down terrorists who threaten our country wherever they are. That means I will not hesitate to take action against ISIL in Syria as well as Iraq. This is a core principle of my presidency. If you threaten America, you will find no safe haven.
Well, I want to get your reaction to that. I also want to ask you, hold on one second, because I want to get something else in there, that the Defense Department, of course, has made it clear time and time again that ISIS cannot be dismantled without going into Syria. Many people argue that doing nothing would only make things worse. So in that vein, what do you think should be done?
Well, we forget the fact they're unhappy because we're over there. We're occupying, we're dictating their lives to them. I'm a believer in Major General Smedley Butler, the two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winning Marine, who says we need to pass a constitutional amendment that our military can't go over 500 miles from our shore. We got the capability to blow up the world 100 times over. What do we need bases all over the world for, and why are we involved in this?
But do you think ignoring it could exacerbate the issue in any way? Do you think ignoring the issue could exacerbate it?
Why not let them determine their own destinies over there? Their countries weren't even made for them. If Iraq needs to divide into 3 countries with the Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shiites, let's let it happen. You know, why is it our job to be the policeman of the world? We're following the road that the Roman Empire went down to a T, and what happened to it? Our involvement in all these wars, think of them. We spend so much money on war now, our own country's falling apart. My belief is you should take care of your own backyard first before you start venturing out into other people's yards.
Okay, all right. Former Minnesota governor and host of Off the Grid, Jesse Ventura, always good to have you on.
Thank you. Norm Coleman's your classic chicken hawk from Minnesota, protested the war in Vietnam. The numbers speak for themselves.
Were you high when you sued Chris Kyle's widow?
Was I high? You know, that's a question, and I expect it from someone from Fox.
Just a serious question.
No, it ain't. No, it ain't, because I never sued the widow. I sued him.
Okay, well, she's suffering a lot of pain right now.
No, she isn't.
How do you know that?
Because insurance pays for it all. She hasn't paid 1 cent. How do I know it? It's my case.
So you stand by that?
The case got overturned because the truth came out. Insurance is paying for all of it. It isn't costing his family a cent. That's the way legal works if you do your homework.
Would you apologize to her?
No, she should apologize to me for the lie that her husband told about me. Why would I apologize? I didn't do anything. You only apologize if you've done something wrong, pal.
Do you believe individuals should be able to own shoulder-mounted RPGs, civilians?
That's a rocket. That's not a gun. That's not a handgun.
Okay, so given that, I'm hearing then that
I'm talking about firearms.
Okay, fair enough, Governor.
I'm not talking about army tanks. I'm not talking about...
So therefore...
Okay, all right, well, shouldn't we start doing background checks then on people that buy manure because you can make bombs out of them?
But the question I'm really getting to, Governor, is in the context of this kind of fighting back against the government, if you are limiting individual civilians simply to what you have now described as firearms, it doesn't really stand to reason that those would be effective against Apache helicopters, tanks, so on and so forth, does it?
Well, it did in Vietnam.
But it's a very different situation there, Governor, and the other difference there also is that...
It's people... No, it isn't. It's people fighting to be free. It's people fighting to be self-governed, to govern themselves. That's what the Vietnam people were fighting over.
Yeah, but Governor, you also have to consider...
Country. What's that?
I think you have to consider also when it comes to Vietnam that the strategy from the Vietnamese was simply to get as
Kill
many
JFK.
American casualties as
That's the only
possible,
reason why we have
knowing
Vietnam.
that the U.S. had a limit to the number of people they were willing to lose. So it would be a very different situation to say that those
Martin
weapons
Luther
are going to
King,
keep the American government from
JFK.
becoming tyrannical against its own people. I just don't
Poor
see the
JFK.
connection.
Poor Martin
Really? Well,
Luther.
then why is it that these genocides
Martin Luther
happen
King.
in countries where the government genocides their people and kills them in masses? They always happen in countries where guns are outlawed.
But Governor, you're
Pretty
cherry
amazing on that, isn't it?
picking that
Now,
bit
and
of
let's-
data.
Okay, this is good discussion. Let's go back to World War II.
No, but hold on, Governor. Before we do that, you're cherry picking only a fact about guns when there are so many other factors in countries that lead to oppression by the government or don't lead to oppression by the government that have nothing to do with guns.
Let's throw in the whole destruction of our Bill of Rights.
Well, that's a different discussion.
When the
That's a
Wall
different
Street
discussion.
people were protesting, what happened? The government came in with pepper spray and dogs and ran them off. There went the First Amendment that guaranteed you the right to protest.
No, well,
Let's
now,
go to
Governor,
wait a minute.
now
Let's
you're
go to
getting...
the Fourth Amendment. A reasonable search and seizure. They're now flying drones over us. They've got us under surveillance.
Governor, I totally am going to be more in agreement with you. We're kind of switching issues, though. I feel like these are different issues.
Destruction of our Bill of Rights here.
I think that each one of these is a different issue.
Let's disarm the public because we're going to keep you safe and we're going to take care of you. You don't need to have these guns. They're too dangerous for you to have.
Wars are very profitable to certain big businesses. And, of course, big business needs to be in the Middle East so that we can get the oil out of the Middle East, so we can get the lithium out of Afghanistan. You know, they discovered a vein of lithium there they say is worth $1 trillion. Well, what is lithium used for? Every cell phone, computer, and soon-to-be electric cars. Let's talk about why we're really there. We're not there. How does any of these wars affect our freedom in any way? The United States is not in any threat. They're not going to do a Normandy invasion on us, Al-Qaeda in Virginia.
Yeah, but hang on, you're being slightly naive, aren't you? Because
I'm not being naive, sir.
I think you are being naive.
No.
Because I think that it's clear one of the main reasons that America went into Afghanistan was to try and get Al-Qaeda dismantled, the organization which committed the 9/11 atrocity.
Really?
Well, you don't think so?
Well, how come Al-Qaeda put the heroin business out? They took all the poppy growers and stopped the production of heroin.
What would you have done?
Wait, now how much of that illegal heroin was propping up the international banks with laundered money, and when it dried up, the first recession happened? Well, now that we're back in there, we aligned with the poppy growers, and the heroin business is back up full swing again. I thought we fight a war on drugs here.
All right, Jesse,
we're not.
What would you have done on September the 12th, 2001? What would you have done if you'd been president?
What would I have done?
Yeah.
I would have done a legitimate investigation to find out what exactly happened on 9/11. How did they know who did this so quickly like they did Lee Harvey Oswald? How quick they knew Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy.
Because the people who did it were identified and we knew who they were.
Well, then why couldn't we have stopped them beforehand if they were identified and we knew who they were?
It was a failure of intelligence. Everyone's accepting
No, it wasn't. We knew before with Condoleezza Rice's memo on August 6th when it stated right in the memo, bin Laden to steal planes and run them into buildings. And more stuff is coming out now also, how much the Bush administration ignored the intelligence. It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
Oh, come off it, Jesse.
No, not oh, come off it. Wait a minute. Every war fought starts with a false flag operation.
You can't, in all seriousness, sit there and try and make out anybody.
Okay, let me ask you this, Piers. Wait a minute. Let me ask you something. How much studying have you actually done of 9/11 other than what the government's told you and what mainstream media has told you? I've been studying it 4 years.
I was editor of a national newspaper.
I've talked to people. Wait a minute.
Depth every day for 5-6 months.
Really?
So I know a lot about it.
Well,
One thing I do know is,
let me ask you this
you
then.
cannot say that any member of the Bush administration knew it was going to happen or wanted it to happen. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
Ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about your BBC. I have a tape of a BBC reporter broadcasting directly back to England talking about a third building has collapsed. World Trade Center Building 7 talks for
7 minutes. All the while she's talking, World Trade Center Building 7 is still standing right behind her.
Dreamster.
Didn't fall for another half hour. Yet they were doing a pre-broadcast back to England that yes, it's true.
You need to
that
take
this
a break.
building fell and it hadn't fallen yet.
The reason I voted for Dr. Stein, I'll tell you why. I went with the Green Party because she fulfilled my top three. My top three were getting out of the Middle Eastern wars, ending the war on drugs, and starting a war on climate change.
Well, to be fair, we interviewed her, and I agree with two of those three. She said, look, if you don't vote for me, vote for Trump because Hillary wants World War III. I mean, anybody who was honest said Trump was better just because of that.
Well, I don't know any of those quotes. I didn't hear the show or anything like that. That also worries me, though. Trump's supposedly going to put a guy in charge of the EPA that doesn't think we're polluting at all.
Jesse, this is where the rubber. We're going to break one more segment with you. I'm going to talk about your book in the final segment, but just let me throw this at you. I get that humans are doing GMO and toxic waste dumping and real problems. A carbon tax is on carbon dioxide that the plants breathe. It only shuts off our power plants, Governor. It's not.
The thing is, though, here's the deal, Alex. It's this simple. Scientific fact, undisputable, can't be denied. The more carbon there is in the air, the higher the temperatures will be. And right now, the atmosphere has the most carbon in the air that has ever been recorded. Now, a lot of that comes from the Earth itself, but certainly a lot of it is mass-produced by us. So, to me, it's an important thing.
Well, let's talk about when we come back. But you said something key.
Oil's an old energy.
I hear you.
Human beings, it's time for us to go.
We got to go to break.
They're all the same. Most of these media guys are all a bunch of chicken hawks. You know what a chicken hawk is, don't you?
Tell our audience what a chicken hawk is.
Well, a chicken hawk is a person when it was their time to serve and go to war and be in the military, they were chicken. But they come back 20, 25 years later and now they're hawks. They want to go to war. They want to kick everyone's butt because they don't have to do it now.
Was Bill O'Reilly?
That's a chicken hawk.
Bill O'Reilly and I are not friends, but in fairness to him, did he ever duck out on service or anything? Do we have any proof about him being a chicken?
He never served. Neither did Hannity. Neither did Limbaugh. Do you want the list to go on with all these guys that support the war and support kicking butt?
There's a difference.
And none of them ever did it themselves.
That's the kind of the Colin Powell school of thought. But there's a difference between guys who weren't called to serve versus guys avoiding serving.
Weren't called. Everyone turns 18.
Okay, the fact that they didn't volunteer.
Where do you get the fact that you weren't called? It's called go down and enlist and then serve your country.
Well, there's a difference.
You call it, not someone else.
But just because somebody doesn't volunteer for the military doesn't mean they're a chicken versus somebody who was drafted and avoids the draft. That's a little bit of a different discussion, I think.
No, it isn't.
No?
Somebody that doesn't volunteer for the military and then comes back 20 years later and wants to go kick everyone's butt with the military, that's a chicken hawk.
Okay.
How many of this audience personally, financially, feel genuinely better off after 4 years? If you do, applaud. Okay. And if you don't, applaud now. So, it's probably about 50-50. So half of this...
I got that at about 70-30.
Let's put it at 60-40.
All right. I'll
maybe
compromise.
60-40. But whatever it was, certainly a number of people in the room would agree they're not better off.
Okay, but let's get to brass tacks here. And again, I'm the independent. In the economy, things that are done 3, 4, 5 years ago show up today. So when the recession of 08 hit, which Barack Obama inherited, Bush did the first bailout. That was because it hit in 08 because of decisions done in 03, 04, when you had a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate.
People have such short memories. If they go back to the Republican rule, that was 2000 when we had the largest attack in U.S. history took place. We got involved in 2 wars that we're still fighting that are not winnable, and the economy was completely tanked. And people want to go back to that. I don't.
Well, time's going to tell.
I don't, Alex. I hope Donald brings in new people. I hope he does what he said, drains the swamp and starts. That's the mandate he got. was from the people to go in there and change Washington as we know it. And to do that don't mean Rudy Giuliani, Newt Gingrich, and this cast of characters.
I absolutely agree with you. The argument is that they know how the thing runs so that he'll be able to basically get what he wants as an executive, having them carry out his will. And so they're like the janitor that knows where everything is in the building.
I don't buy into that, having governed. I don't buy, if you're bringing back the old guard, then, and now they're going to try to overturn Roe v. Wade and send that back to the states, which appears like a fair thing to do until you realize that then poor women won't have access to that type of procedure because they won't be able to afford to go to
Sure, Jesse, you can't have marijuana sent back to the states. You can't have marijuana sent back to the states and stuff like that and then not have abortion sent back. I mean, that's where it's supposed to be.
Well, if you're going to be consistent that way, but again, like I said, for women in poor states, if they decide not to allow it, then they're going to be in a tough situation where rich women it won't be a problem for because they could go to whatever state they need to if they desire that to do that type of thing.
All I know.
Me on that. So it will discriminate against the poor.
Let me throw something out. You can't take a civil rights issue and put it up to a vote. If you did that, we might still have slavery if it was allowed to be voted on.
Jesse,
You can't take civil rights and let people vote on it.
Well, Jesse, what are you talking about? The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was voted on. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was voted on by Congress. The Open Housing Act of 1968 was done by LBJ. First went to demonstrations by Martin Luther King. These were done by the representatives of the people, not by these unelected judges.
Well, and not by the populace itself, Pat. Fine, if the elected officials will stand up for what's right and do what's right with civil rights like they did back then, I fully agree with you. But you can't put a civil rights issue on the general ballot in a state and let people vote on it. And the government only has a theory.
Right, well, the government has...
No, this is a theory. Their theory is 19 Islamic radicals armed with box cutters defeated our multi-billion-dollar air defense system, all while conspiring with a bearded guy in a cave in Afghanistan.
That is exactly what happened.
That's their theory.
No, that's not a theory, it's a fact.
That's their theory.
No, Jesse,
that's a fact.
That's what happened.
Really?
Yes, I'm sorry to kill your conspiracy theories, but that is what happened.
Then why haven't anyone been brought up for trial?
Because they
haven't
died.
given one shred of evidence in a trial.
In case you missed the story.
Well, then what do we got all these guys in Gitmo for? And we got the supposed confessor to it, who they waterboarded 180 times to get the confession. Got news for you, Piers. If they waterboarded you 180 times, you'd confess to it.
One thing I did that I read in the book that I just totally found just alien to me is this idea that you believe in 9/11 conspiracies. That you...
Well, let me tell it to you this way. Why is it that when you ask any question about 9/11, you're immediately attacked?
I'm not attacking you.
You're not, but no, I'm speaking in general. I'm not saying you guys, but I've watched people get attacked. People have their credibility attacked. My problem is I look at it and I go, how can two planes knock down 3 buildings?
Pretty easy. Those are 757, 747.
But there were 3 buildings that went down.
Well, there was a lot of fire and there was a lot of damage.
Well, first of all, jet fuel blew up at the start. Jet fuel is 4/5, and I don't want to stay on this. I'd rather talk other things.
Yeah.
But jet fuel is 4/5 kerosene. It doesn't burn hot. So using the analogy that it could melt the metal, then propane burns hotter. So if you turn on your camp stove for 3 hours, shouldn't it melt the grates? But it doesn't, does it?
I want to take one issue with...
It doesn't.
I want to...
And I just question...
He's going Rosie O'Donnell on
and
me
I
here.
do, wait a minute.
That's Rosie O'Donnell.
Well, I know a little bit. How can they fall at the rate of gravity?
Look,
they fell at the rate of gravity in powder. They blew into powder. My president already stated that we won. He stood on the deck of an aircraft carrier and told me so. Then, of course, they said we'd be greeted like liberators, which we weren't. They said that Iraqi oil would pay for the war, which it hasn't. Why should I then believe these people who have not been right once since this war started?
Has he got a point, Michael? You know, Jesse, I've got something here for you. Really, maybe you'll recognize. You know, you've always been a predator, and nothing's changed. But let me just say this. You know, taking Jesse's idea,
Jesse, it's a little statue of you.
It's statue. You as in the predator.
You're not laughing, Jesse. It's cute.
But you know, Jesse should know this. You could use that argument, Larry, with every war we have ever fought. You can go back to the Second World War, you go back to Pearl Harbor, the Battle of the Bulge. You go through all those things.
When they bombed Pearl Harbor, we didn't announce we won.
But wait a minute, you're right. Did George Bush make an absolute faux pas with the whole thing on the Abraham Lincoln? Absolutely right. He certainly did. But you know, we're there. You just don't walk away. Battle of the Bulge, you name a war that we haven't, in fact, been in trouble and had to change things like we changed with the surge.
I think it's an obscenity to hold up a doll, whether it's a Jesse Ventura or anyone. You know why? Because 1 out of 5 returning veterans, if that doll represents a veteran, have post-traumatic stress disorder or brain injury. And we have a candidate, McCain. We have a candidate of McCain who is unwilling to support the men and women who have served this country with a GI Bill. But the main thing...
Walter Reed Army Hospital? Have you been to Walter Reed Army Hospital?
The Nation magazine... The Nation magazine's reporter has spent a year working with veterans who've been denied disability benefits. I have not been there. But I'm not. I'm speaking.
Have you not been there? I've been there 4 times.
Michael, let me just
finish. 4 times. So don't come at me about
Michael,
You've been to the hospital. Well, why don't you chicken hawks go fight the war for a change?
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you.
You know, going to the hospital's one thing, but I don't see these hardcore Republicans. They were draft dodgers during Vietnam. Senator Norm Coleman's your classic chicken hawk from Minnesota, protested the war in Vietnam. Hell no, he wouldn't go. Well, his slogan today should be, hell yes, clean up my mess.
I personally like the Electoral College because it doesn't let another state dominate it, and it keeps the electioneering in control in compartmentalized pieces and makes election fraud harder. Bev Harris, the top.
That's the biggest baloney. That, you know, okay, then why don't we do it that way for other elections?
Okay, well, I had Bev Harris.
How come president is the only election where the people don't pick them? See, that's the fix. The people don't pick the president.
When the power of love overtakes the love of power, then we'll have peace. When the power of love overtakes the love of power, then we'll have peace.
On that musical bombshell, we'll take a short break. When we come back.
Melissa Stockwell made a choice to serve her country, and when she lost her leg in Iraq, she made another. Melissa chose to fight, not only for herself, but for her fellow soldiers who had endured even more. Modelo, brewed for those with a fighting spirit.
There has been a philosophical route to control others since man could first convey a language or put it in writing. As soon as people had power and one slime ball that came out of the ocean developed into a stronger man than his neighbor, somebody had the inclination to control someone else. You can see a mirror image of society really watching little children even at a preschool. And you can see factions already starting at 4 years old. Who's going to be the strongest, who's the fastest, who can outwit the other guy, and who can bargain off the most Barbies and G.I. Joes to somebody else. George Bush Sr. just didn't stand up and say there's 1,000 points of light in the New World Order. It didn't just start in 91.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
You can sell anything, if you think about it. Look at the circus. And if they can sell and pitch their goods and hardware to people, and it makes people feel good even though it's a false sense of security, like we have to do this to protect you from yourself. Before you know it, they're raised up on that ivory tower And it's no longer, we're doing this to protect you from yourself. We're doing this to control you and manipulate you. If we don't do this for your own good, protect you from terrorism, give you national health care, because you're too stupid to pick your own health care. And you sure can't be trusted to build any highways or control the flow of water within your state or county, or dam it, or have a power plant or anything without our overbearing guidance. So you need to surrender all these skills and freedoms to us. If you were to analyze them mentally, many would be diagnosed as megalomaniacs and sociopaths. Everybody has varying degrees of desires, even sick people. How sick they want to be, how in charge they want to be. So some people will naturally be fine of just being in charge of a few thousand people. Others think in the size of nations. The best way to control a population is through resources. You don't gain much ground going door to door and kicking in doors and doing arms seizures. If you can control the ability for people to prosper and produce and to eat and to drink, then you control a population. By over-regulating industries with no scientific proof, you have crushed the ability for American manufacturing to be the lead in the world. And if we're not the lead in the world and you start closing plants, people aren't working, which means they're not buying food or buying Christmas presents. We should be the #1 exporter of wood products. What do? We continually, year after year, set a new record of catastrophic wildfires, burning up in a matter of days. You cannot recover that. I can't wave a wand and make 200 years, 300 years of forestry grow for your children to enjoy. So it's that Hegelian dialectic. If you create the catastrophe, then you already have an answer to that catastrophe ahead of time. Then you create a catastrophe so you can come in and be the hero and save them. We cannot continue on this path without imploding, self-destructing. You will always have predator and prey. As we get weaker and weaker, we invite the predator. Now we can say it's North Korea or China or Venezuela. An adversarial country that seeks to have a larger stand in the world with a military or economically would be a fool not to pick on a country with the rich resources that we have and not make an attempt at a takeover. Do I want it to happen? Absolutely not. I'll be the first person to fight a red wave of Chinese invading us. I guarantee you I'll be up front with good friends. But if for an adversary not to take advantage of our weakening position strategically or tactically, they're not going to pass that up. And I don't see how we're going to get out of the current. We're not going to get through one more generation. Look at the ammunition sales that have been going on. What does the USDA Forest Service need to be stockpiling current combat 5.56 ammunition, M16 ammunition? Is there like some wave of Smokey the Bears that are rabid right now? Okay, somebody's preparing for something. They obviously aren't doing it to protect us. I think they're afraid of a cataclysmic backlash. I mean, you can only push a people so far before they said enough's enough. How do we mitigate the damage? How do we do something good? We do some introspection, if you will. I'm not talking some Buddhist thing. I just mean that old phrase of looking in the mirror, saying, here's what I believe in, and here's what I'm willing to die for. Is it going to happen and we're just going to save the whole economy and country as we know it right now, or as we know it historically? No. It is infixable as we know it. It's going to have to implode, collapse, and we're going to have to, the survivors that want to prosper and be free again are going to have to rebuild again.
We make technology that moves people. This is the 2019 Nissan Rogue, featuring tech like Pro Pilot Assist. It helps keep you centered in your lane and in control.
Karen recently put together a donate box.
Landlines are dead.
Then she put it in the trunk so she wouldn't forget to drop it off at Goodwill, and drove around with it for 6 months. We've all been there. Donate.
On Monday, George W. Bush will campaign in South Carolina for his brother. As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct for the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. You said, quote, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing, close quote. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies. Do you still believe President Bush should have been impeached?
First of all, I have to say, as a businessman, I get along with everybody. I have business all over the world. I know so many of the people in the audience. And by the way, I'm a self-funder. I have my wife and I have my son. That's all I have. I don't have this. So let me just tell you, I get along with everybody, which is my obligation to my company, to myself, etc. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. Took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush. When a member on the stage's brother gets attacked,
I got
brother
about
gets
5
to
or
respond.
6. Do I get to do it 5 or 6 times or just once responding to that? So here's the deal. I'm sick and tired of Barack Obama blaming my brother for all of the problems that he's had. And frankly, I could care less about the insults that Donald Trump gives to me. It's blood sport for him. He enjoys it, and I'm glad he's happy about it. But I am sick and tired of him going after my family. My dad is the greatest man alive in my mind. And while Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe, and I'm proud of what he did. And he's had the gall to go after my mother.
The World Trade Center came down during your brother's reign.
Remember
that.
Hold on. Let me finish. He's had the gall to go after my mother.
That's not keeping us
I won
safe.
the lottery when I was born 63 years ago and looked up and I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
this
be running.
This is not about my family or his family.
Okay.
This is about the South Carolina families that need someone to be a commander-in-chief that can lead. I'm that person.
Governor Kasich, would you weigh in on?
How many times has it happened to you? The phone rings and the number on the caller ID sort of looks familiar, and so you...
World Trade Center 7 had always been considered the starting point for rebuilding. Located north of the slurry wall, 7 had been cleared faster than the rest of the site, and there had been no bodies to recover. Pelted by debris when the North Tower collapsed, 7 burned until late afternoon, allowing occupants to evacuate to safety.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
As soon as Congress acts on this bill, the men our intelligence agencies believed helped orchestrate the 9/11 attacks can face justice. The bill would also provide clear rules for our personnel involved in detaining and questioning captured terrorists. The information that the Central Intelligence Agency has obtained by questioning men like Khalek Sheikh Mohammed has provided valuable information and has helped disrupt terrorist plots, including strikes within the United States. For example, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed described the design of planned attacks on buildings inside the U.S. and how operatives were directed to carry them out. That is valuable information for those of us who have the responsibility to protect the American people. He told us the operatives have been instructed to ensure that the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping. That the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping. He gave us information that helped uncover Al-Qaeda cells' efforts to obtain biological weapons. We've also learned information from the CIA program that has helped stop other plots.
That was it, guys.